Welcome back to the Grandstream video guide series. In this video, we will discuss setting up an OpenVPN tunnel for site-to-site communication through the GWN7000 series. OpenVPN is an open-sourced implementation that prioritizes security through its robust encryption algorithms while maintaining great flexibility among a variety of different client devices. It has a wide array of supported devices and platforms such as Windows, Linux, and many others. An OpenVPN implementation is made of a server and a client. In our implementation of site-to-site, VPN shown here, the router in the main office will act as the server and the branch office router as the client. In this chapter, we will guide you through the process of configuring OpenVPN to establish a secure and reliable connection between a main office and a branch site. Let's get started. First, we log into the web interface of the router in the main office. Before we start configuring the OpenVPN tunnel, we will set up our certificates first, which will streamline the tunnel creation process later. A router that acts as an OpenVPN server will be used to issue the certificates for itself and its clients. To create our certificates, we will head to System Settings and then Certificate Management. Here, we will add the CA certificate. We will keep the key length at 2048-bit and adjust the digest algorithm to SHA-256 for additional security. For security reasons, OpenVPN certificates are only valid for a specific period of time after which the certificates must be replaced, and we will fill out the remaining fields with the appropriate information. Next, we will create the server and client certificates. We will start with the server certificate first. Click on Add and name your certificates appropriately so you can properly identify them when exporting them for later use. Select the CA certificate that you created in the previous step and set the certificate type to server. We will keep the key length at 2048-bit and change the digest algorithm to SHA-256. We will use the same expiration period defined under CA certificate page. Next, we create a client certificate. We will repeat the steps for creating the server certificate, but this time select Client as the certificate type. Then, it will prompt us to select a user that will be assigned the client certificate. Click on Add User and set the status to On. The username and password will only be used if the OpenVPN server mode is set to user authentication. Under OpenVPN subnet, we enter the remote subnet of the router in the branch office. The remote subnet is 172.16.20.0/24. Under key length and digest algorithm, we will apply the same values used for server certificate and CA certificate, and we fill out the remaining fields with the appropriate information. Afterwards, we will export the CA certificate, the client certificate, and client key. These components will be used on the client side later on, so keep them somewhere safe for now. Now that we have our certificates created on our main office router, let's start creating the OpenVPN tunnel. We will head to VPN section and create the OpenVPN server on our main office router. Turn on the OpenVPN service and name your tunnel accordingly so you can easily identify which site you are working on. Set the server authentication mode using your preferred method of authentication. In this tutorial, we will keep SSL as the server authentication mode. Next, we will select the WAN interface that the tunnel will be using to send traffic and select the interfaces that will be allowed to use the tunnel in the destination section. Select the default VLAN and any additional subnets that you would like to have access to the tunnel. The local port is the OpenVPN port that the remote router will use to connect to the router in the main office. The GWN router supports many different encryption and hash algorithms, but in this video, we will keep the encryption methods default. More complex algorithms can be used at the expense of performance. Take note of the local port and encryption methods that are used during the server setup, as we will reference this port later during the client setup portion. Next, we will use those certificates that we created earlier in the video. Then, we will designate the tunnel subnet. This can be any private subnet. but preferably something that does not conflict with the client side or anything that might be confused with other subnet. You can set up push routes on the server to provide the OpenVPN client with a list of subnets that are accessible through the VPN tunnel. In this example, we will include the default subnet only. Proceed with saving the settings on the main office router, and we will move on to the client or branch office side's tunnel setup. On the client side, router or branch office, we will navigate to the VPN section and select VPN clients. Add a new VPN client and set the connection type to OpenVPN. Similar to what we did on the server side, we will select the interfaces that we will allow to have access to the tunnel. We will keep the local port of the VPN client default, but this port can be any port and does not need to match the server side. Next, we will enter the OpenVPN server IP, which will be the IP address of the server side. This will typically be a public IP that the server is reachable at. Enter the same OpenVPN server port that was configured on the main office. If you recall, we kept the port default at 1194 for simplicity's sake. Next, we will select the authentication mode and encryption modes that we configured in the main office's router. There are two options that allow the OpenVPN client to know which subnets are accessible through the VPN tunnel. You can use push routes at the server side or routes at the client. We will leave the remaining fields as default and move to the certificate section where we need to upload the OpenVPN certificate and key that we saved earlier. The CA certificate will be the main office CA certificate. The customer certificate will be the client certificate branch office that was created on the server side. Finally, upload the customer private key, which is the branch office key. We will not configure customer private key password because the server was configured to use SSL certificates only. Save all your changes and you should see the status of the client attempt to connect to the VPN server. It should only take a few seconds and the status will change to connected when the tunnel is successfully established. To confirm the routers have learned the subnets accessible through the VPN tunnel, we go to Routing, Static Routing. We should see the remote subnets and their outgoing interface under Routing table. The last step in our configuration is to enable VPN on the local subnets to allow them to access the VPN tunnel. And we do that under Network Settings, LAN Settings. You can verify the functionality of the tunnel by using the ping tool on either the server or the client side by targeting a known IP address on the opposite side subnet. That wraps up our tutorial on how to set up a basic OpenVPN tunnel on the GWN7000 routers.